This is Bryce Ellis. We're getting ready to start an intermediate class. The first project that we're going to do is a small platter. I've got a 9-inch blank here. It's cherry, and we're going to mount it on the chuck with a worm screw. So I have prepared a hole that's about 1 inch deep. That's the depth of this worm screw. We're going to mount this worm screw into the chuck, and then we're going to screw the piece onto it for our mounting. So we do that. The worm screw should fit securely in the chuck. And just like everything else, we're going to both tightening things, and now we're going to take this and we're going to screw it into the hole till it's tight onto the face of the chuck, the jaws. And that will hold it on here. I'm going to do a face shield. Just like in our beginner class, we're going to want our tool, the bottom of the flute, to be at center. I'm kind of guessing because I don't have a mark there for center, but it's pretty close. And my piece is round, so I can't really tell. I might be just a tick high, so I'm going to drop it down a little bit. For me, I'm going to cheat anyways because I dropped the tool handle. I don't hold it at level. That's not how I turn. So I drop it down a little bit like this, and since that makes the flute a little higher, we will see how that goes. I'm probably starting, this is a bigger lathe than what we're using in class, so we're going to start at about 800, 900 RPMs on the lathe. You'll be able to go a little faster probably with the 1221s than the 1015s. The 1015s will lag down a little bit. This class is going to be a little bit different than what our beginner class was. Beginner class, we're working spindle work. They had sufficient power for what we were doing with the projects that we did with the 1015 lathes, the mini lathes. The MIDI lathes are a lot better for this class, for the platter, the bowl, and the box. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to true up this edge across the front. I'm going to set my can't talk with face shield on. I'm going to set my tool so that the bevel is straight across here, and then I'm going to start a cut, and I'm going to traverse across there. Still a little bit of saw mark, so I'll make another pass. I'm getting a little bit of torn grain out here on the outside. I'll take probably a little bit of extra cut there and maybe get some of that torn grain off. A little bit of torn grain there on the end grain. On our platter, my grain is running this way, so it is perpendicular to the bed of the lathe. We have to use different tools for safety when we go to bowl orientation versus spindle orientation. I'm using a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. We can use our spindle gouge. What we want to stay away from is a rough and gouge. Some of our other tools that we have, a skew chisel, parting tool. I am going to use a parting tool when we inset for our chuck to turn this around, but we're not going to go fast. We're going to take it real easy. You want to be real careful with a tool with a tang in a bowl orientation, because the thing that changes from spindle work, where we're working between centers, your grain is running parallel to the bed of the lathe. When I orient this bowl or this platter in this direction, I'm crossing long grain and end grain every quarter. So if I was to quarter this out, I've got long grain here and end grain here. And that end grain, when we were working with our spindle turning, the end grain, when you started going uphill with that, or you got the wing into that, that's what we called a catch. And it usually splintered out the wood and get a big chunk. So what we're doing now is we're cutting on the end grain and we're slicing across it with our bowl gouge. I'm taking my bowl gouge, I'm starting this, I get a start with the point edge, and then I'm using the bevel across here and traversing across this cut. I'm taking a slow pass. It's making a predominantly clean cut. I do have a little bit of torn grain on the end here. As we get more balanced, we can speed the lathe up a little bit. Speed the lathe up, slow the cut down, gives you a smoother cut. There it is. There it is. Not as much corn grain. This is shavings that's coming off of that bowl. And that's what you want to see when you get to a smooth edge here and we're actually turning the piece. We want to see shavings where it's actually long, stringy shavings. That means that we're making a cut. Things are right. All right, so there's smooth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start smoothing this around. I want to grab my calipers. I know what size my chuck is. It's 2 1/8. But I was going to cheat. And we're going to use, so I actually I did that wrong. Because we want to fit inside. Something I should have done before I put the blank on. Two and 8. The reason I was doing that is we're going to take this and we're going to measure across here and make a mark on our bowl blank. Where we match them. And these are sharp. The other side I've sanded off. So there's my mark for my chuck so that I can do a recess for when we turn around. This is going to be the bottom side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a recess on this. This is about a 1/4 inch deep, so that when we get the outside of our platter done, we can flip it over and mount it in the chuck. So that's what I'm going to do next. Let me drop this down. I'm going to grab my parting tool and I'm just going to go straight in right here. About 300. I also know that my jaws are dovetail jaws, so I want to make a little bit of a dovetail going in here. I'm going to clear this out with spindle gouge. It has my spindle gouge has a sharper point on it than my bowl gouge. It gives me a little more freedom to get in the tight space. All I'm doing here is clearing out this space across the center. what I was doing there is just getting me a little bit of a dovetail where I inset. The bottom hole of the hole is bigger than the top of the hole because my chucks are dovetail chucks. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we've got a bulb platter that is 9 inches in diameter. We want to calculate a foot, and we want to calculate the foot based on about 2/3 of the bottom, I believe, is what we try to figure. So between 2/3 of 9 is pretty easy. So I want a 6-inch diameter foot. Now I have a 6-inch diameter, and that's going to be the outside of my foot for this platter. So we're going to have a shallow curve here, and probably a 1/2 inch . Now we'll probably have to redo that because I think I've got a little bit of out of round. In order to make it round, we're going to speed the lathe up a little bit. And I'm going to come across this just like this. And just like when we did with our rough and gouge, and you were going like this with your tool across the tool rest for roughing, I'm going to go, I put my right foot forward, and I'm going to go just like this with the bottom side of my flute. And just skin across the face. I can, if I want to, go in like this and make a path all the way. I lost the cut, but I can make that sort of a path, but it's easier to do it this other way. We're humans and we're all about easy. Alright, so let me mark this again. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start to shape our piece. We'll come back and we'll do our foot later. What I'm doing is I'm taking the point of the gouge, I'm pointing it into the wood till I get a cut. I open the flute, maybe 5 or 10 degrees. And we're going to rotate our tool rest around as we get a curve. so that we can maintain the shortest distance across our extension. What I had to do there is rotate it a little bit back. I'd opened the flute a little bit too much and it was getting a little bit of a too big of a cut. I want to keep the tool rest so that I can go start to finish on my cut. Now that I've got a little bit of a curve across here. So this cut, we start out here, we put the point of the gouge into the wood, we open up our flute, and then we make a continuous cut around the curve. Now, unlike our spindle turning, when you are using a bowl gouge and you are making a curve across this way, we don't have the gouge handle against our body. We can't move in the direction that we need to. I'm having to start over here, which is somewhat awkward to hold, and then I'm pulling it around to me. So I can't do that and hold the gouge against my side. So I'm gonna have to hold it out here. I don't have a death grip on it. I'm holding it out here. I start to cut and then I come around. And I wanna be in a comfortable enough position that I can rotate myself enough around the piece. And we just gently rotate our tool rest around so that we can start here and finish over here with support all the way around. On both ends, I'm farther out than I am here in the middle, but I want to have good support on my tool rest all the way this full width of this cut. If I got a little bit of too much of a cut, I'm going to come in here and go half. And essentially I started that cut the same way that I would out here on the outside, because I'm I am starting a cut in the middle of the cut. This one is where my gouge was a while ago, so I can pick up with it the same as I was. The platter or a shallow bowl, we're going to make simple. We can make design curves in here, but what I want you to keep in mind is whatever shape you do on the outside of this platter or your bowl, when we get to that, whatever shape, you're going to have to follow that on the inside so that you have a uniform thickness across the curve of the bowl. I'm going to change gouges right quick because I'm feeling something that's just not right. I don't know whether it's the wood, the gouge, or... Same process, just a bigger gouge. Lot better cut that time. I don't know if it was the gouge or if it was just the instructor out of practice. But wow, really clean cut there. That looks good. I like that. That would be good enough for a finished cut, I think. And what I'm going to do is just give me a little bit of an indentation right here on the bottom to set the foot off. Set the bowl and the foot to give it just a little bit of a separation. I'm going to give myself just a little bit of mark there where I'm going to start the inset of my base. when we finish off the base. And I have another Nova chuck just for grins. Before we take this off, does it fit? And it does. So all right, so now what we would do is I would sand this around to the edge, and I would finish between these 2 points. One thing that I'm going to do, and the one thing that we do use in that we go to when we start using our intermediate class, a new tool is a negative rake scraper. This is a scraper. The scraper has a bevel on the top and bottom. I'm going to hold this level. Typically your regular scrapers that don't have the down degree grind on the top side, you want to hold them above. You want to cut on center, but you want to hold them at a down degree. What the negative rake does is it takes away from having to hold your tool at an awkward position. Now I can change this and I can go straight here. Now what the negative rake scraper is going to do is it's going to clean up any tool marks. I've got one line across here where the tool bounced a little bit. We take this negative rake scraper and we come across here and it'll clean that right up. You go just a light cut. I want little bitty fine shavings. I'm just barely touching this. And you go across there. If you have several humps, if you have several tool marks, you want to go here till you can't see the marks of the tools. And then we would sand it. But these are really fine, 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 very fine shavings. And I'm just barely touching this wood. But you can see how quickly it's taking that mark off. I've still got a little bit of it left, but you want to work and make sure you have a continuous flow on your curve. The shape I have looks like an ice cream bowl. More of a bowl shape than a platter shape, because I usually do wings on my platters. Like a deep plate. All right, there we go. So now I would start sanding, and I'd start sanding probably 150, 180 grit after using the negative rake scraper, and progress up from there. I'm gonna go ahead, while we have this, I'm gonna go across the bottom. And I have a real clean base after I doing that. It'll be, to sand out, it would be real clean. All right. So what I would do is I'd go through and I'd sand this through my grits, and then I would take this off of the worm screw. And it's just going to unscrew the same way it's screwed on. But for the time of our video, what I'm going to do, instead of sand, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to rotate this. If you could look in here, there's just a little bit of a thread in there where I had the worm screw in there. The worm screw is threaded. It will take us more than likely a class and a half to do every project, and we'll get our same 5 weeks. And we will do the 3 projects. Some class members may get to a 4th project. All right, so first thing I'm going to do on this, I want to make sure that this face is flat to the base of my platter. And I'm going to clean up this edge here. So we're going to move the tool rest around to get in position for that. It's pretty square, but we're going to make it true. Not sure what was going on with my 1/2 inch gouge, but I'm using my 5/8 inch one-way gouge now. Doesn't matter as much as the middle. We're going to make the middle go away. When we start scooping this out to follow in, what I like to do is, first thing first, the tool rest a little high for that size of gouge. So we're going to come in here, we're going to have to take the tailstock off. I have to have some help. I mean, we're going to get back. All right, so we're going to come back in here, and what we want to do is make the entry cut, and I have to come straight in with the bevel of my gouge. And I'm gonna, as soon as it gets a shoulder there, I'm gonna rotate it this way. Now what I want to do is probably start out over here on my rim. If I'm gonna do anything decorative or make any kind of figure out here on my rim, I want to do that while I have meat of the wood in here before we core out this inside. If I get it and I'm trying to do a rim out here, after I've already hollowed this out, you get flex out here on the outside edge, and you're not going to get a clean cut on the outside edge. So if we're going to do a rim of some kind out here, we have to think about that right now before we get all of this inside core cut out. When we start coring out on a bowl or a platter or hollow form like this, we're only going to cut on one side to get the other side for free. I'll pull this a little higher. Still a tick higher. The thing I like to remember on this right here is every pass that I make is a practice cut. I don't have to finish all the way into the end. I can do that later, clean it up. Can go this way. We were talking about not being able to cut while I go with the other gouge. I think I just figured it out. The grain of the wood. And sometimes it just likes something different. I'm going to give a little bit of a bevel down in with a little bit of a curve. And that's going to be my rim for this. It's going to be simple. I'm not going to go really technical edge here at this point. What we're trying to do is technique. Take the hand away and I lost the support of my cut here. This is what happens. It kind of bounces away out, and what it's trying to do is the tip of your gouge is trying to come out of this hole. So we have a hole that's captivating this point of our gouge. When I took away my hand, it's trying to pull out of it. So that's what the gouge is trying to do, go this way. And you can see what it did to my cut right here. The other The other issue that you can do, either not enough or too much. If I push too hard, what I'm doing is I'm compressing long grain harder than end grain. Remember, we have the grain running this way, so here are my two long end grain cuts. Here's my two long grain cuts. The long grain compresses easier than end grain, so you're creating a bounce on there. And so that's the two ways to mess up a cut on a bowl platter type form. You can see those mistakes a whole lot easier on the outside of than the inside, because the inside, what I have right now where I was pressing in, I was captivated, but I'm still getting a bounce, and I'll have to clean that out. Okay, we need to find out our depth. So this is depth gauge. Here's the full. I've got a 1/4 inch inset. The bottom there is 1 7/8 inches. So let's go 1.5 inches. I'm going to actually go 1 7/16 inches. That'll give us a good 1/4 inch thickness. You want to do that before you get too far, because we want to know just how deep to go. I'm about 1/2 inch deeper than the initial drill bit where we made our penetration for the worm screw. Just put this at a little bit of an angle, give me a little closer in. And what I'm doing here, since I'm coming from the inside to the outside in this direction, I am leaving myself just a little bit of a lip here, a ledge, so that I can make a clean cut here on this side. It's about all the gouge really likes to do. For some reason, the grain here is just going a different direction. It doesn't like it. So when I try to go this direction, that wasn't bad. We think we're getting close to our depth. What we want to do is take as our depth gauge and make sure. I'm at about the bottom of the hole, and that was about ½ inch to our depth. Now I've set this depth gauge for the 1/4 inch that we have our inset, plus 1/4 inch that I want the base. That way I shouldn't have any problems going to the bottom. If I measure it correctly, and often enough, I shouldn't have that problem. Can't go much deeper here, but maybe one pass. I think that was about half of the distance I had. What I'm trying to do is get this edge of my bowl to make a continuous cut. So that it's continuous all the way to the Got a little bit of a ridge there from my tool, but not too bad. Seems a little thick. This little tip down here on the end, you want to slow down, and as you come in, you just raise the tip of your tool just enough to clean that up. Right across there. gonna actually check this with my other calipers. So it is thick. Okay. I've got a curved in rim here like I wanted. I've got a little bit of tool marks here on the edge where we transition coming across, but remember, for most of that I was going out from the center, so you're going to have that here because you don't have the cut that goes like this all the way into the center. That would alleviate those tool marks right there, mostly. So what I would do now is come in here and reset my tool rests so that the edge of the negative rake is on center. I'm going to speed this thing up. And then we can come out here with this and clean up a little bit. What you're hearing there, that chatter, is the tool, not the tool, but the edge of the bowl is flexing just enough that it's bouncing against the tool. So when we get here, you get just enough of a chatter. I may not be able to clean that up very much. I may have to go to sandpaper. Hadn't quite got that tool mark out. You can see how this scraper leaves just a little bit of a rough cut here on this end grain. I would prefer to have a bowl gouge cut across that and slice it. Get a lot better finish there before we go to sandpaper. But the negative rake scraper is an excellent tool to take away tool marks. So at this point, I would start sanding it. We got the shape that I wanted. I got a uniform thickness down till I start to turn away. I would sand this, I would finish it, and then what we would do is we'd turn it around. And for me, I've got cold jaws to mount on the chuck, to mount the bowl backwards so that we can get to the access to the foot and cut away on it and clean up the foot where we had stopped on the back side over here, and we had saved that for our chucking purposes. So at this point, we would sand it, we would have it finished on from here all the way to the center. And then we're gonna flip it over and jam chuck it. We can jam chuck it against a foam pad, or we can jam chuck it against another piece of wood, or as I've got cold jaws that I can mount the piece backwards so that I have the foot facing out, and we can finish that. Bryce Ellis with South Plains Woodturners, our intermediate class. This is Platter. If you like the video, check it at the bottom. Thanks for coming and thanks for watching. Appreciate it.